Okay, everyone. So now the final question and answer. Actually, there's no such thing as final question and answer. There's no way. There's always more questions, regardless of what happens, until you become an arahant, and then maybe there's no questions. So it is okay to ask questions. So let us see what happens. And today, Deepika informs me that at 11:30 we're going to have a Zoom meeting. So in here, right? Okay, okay. So we'll see what happens later on. Okay, so meeting back in at 11:30. Yeah, good. So okay. So in the meantime, we'll do Q&A and then we'll do some meditation, I suppose, and whatever. All right. So let's just get started. This is my favorite question. Blank. Emptiness. Yay. Okay. So here, Happy New Year. Happy New Year back. So I wish everyone happiness on the new year and full of love. So question, what is love? So this is kind of a difficult question because the word love is used in so many different ways. And so there's love in Buddhism, and there's kind of love that people think about in society at large, and these two are often very different kind of things. One of them is more to do with attachment, the other one has to do with freedom from attachment. They're almost opposites in many different ways. And so what we mean in Buddhism by love is just well-wishing. Yeah, it is... the word metta is actually derived from mitra. Mitra means friend. And so another way of thinking about it is as friendliness, not just as love. So love you have to be careful in interpreting these words. And that's kind of the issue here. And when you feel a strong sense of friendliness to somebody, you really wish them well. May you be well and happy. May you be well and happy. That is kind of what it is about. And if you do that sincerely, with intention, and you really want them well, you will start to feel joy. Happiness will start to bubble up in you. And this is kind of the idea of metta, that developing joy, developing really powerful states of this emotion, which we call metta or love, by simply through the wishing well of other people. So that is really what it comes down to. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that you develop through intentionally. There's also compassion. Compassion is kind of related. The four Brahma Viharas are all important in Buddhism. So the Karuna, Mudita, and Upekkha. And they are all slightly different, but they're all, at least the first three, revolve around feelings, very happy and joyful kinds of states of feeling. That is essentially what it is. You can call it an intention that gives rise to a feeling. An intention of well-wishing plus a feeling that results from that. It's kind of it sort of destroys a bit the purpose of kind of defining love too technically, doesn't it? Technically, what is love? Anyway. Okay, next one. Dear Ajahn, since the ticket to enter Sotapanna is so rare, if someone has practiced to a level that in one's mind, the five spiritual powers are very clear and the four spiritual minds, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, are clear as well, is he or she getting somewhere? Thank you for your wonderful teaching. Yes, of course. If you see these things growing, of course you are getting somewhere. As a general principle, one of the things we should all do in our practice is to ask whether we are growing in good qualities and declining in bad qualities. We should do that regularly. This is kind of very important. Are you becoming a more angry person or a less angry person? Are you becoming more greedy or less greedy? These are kind of the critical issues. And if you find that kind of meditation makes you angry, you may have to change your strategy for meditation. You may have to do things in a slightly different way. Because it can do, if you suppress yourself too much or you oppress yourself by using too much will or whatever, after a while you kind of get fed up with the meditation. And it can actually lead to negative states if you're not careful. So generally speaking, when you look over a period, over 6 months or a year, you should see improvements. And if these five spiritual powers are improving, that is what matters. Doesn't matter so much whether they are clear or not. What matters is that they are strengthening. Strengthening. And the same thing with the 4 Brahma Viharas, the divine abidings, or whatever you want to call them. They should all be strengthening. To the point, ideally, where you feel joy and happiness, and eventually nimittas arise, and maybe you can even enter the jhana states. Then it is really, really good. So that's the practical way. Because if you are improving, you eventually must reach the goal. The goal is reached by improvement, by a sense of change in a positive direction. Wow, a lot of questions. Okay, we're going to have to go and see what happens. So anyway, dear Ajahn, thank you for the teaching, for the humor, especially the endearing comments about Ajahn Brahm. Okay. First, I want to say, all the meditators here and the monastics, that I felt so much joy to be here with them, listening to Dhamma together. It is truly a blessing to have such amazing Kalanamitta. What a wonderful thing to say. So sadhu sadhu for that. My question is this. Recently, I read a book about autistics and neurodivergent thinking. That some people have a different way of seeing the world, which is not neurotypical. As a result, they suffer bullying and unkindness. I would say that everyone, there is of course more neurodivergency and less, but everyone is neurodivergent to some extent. No one is exactly the same, and everyone sees the world slightly differently, someone a little bit more differently, but we're all on the spectrum, basically. So everyone is on the spectrum. So it's terrible that people should bully you for seeing the world. That's kind of what the world is like, and sometimes it's kind of sad. It's another reason to get out of this world, I suppose, because sooner or later you will be reborn as a very neurodivergent person, and then you are likely to suffer the same consequences. We've all been there, we'll all be there again unless we get out of this mess. Why do you think when Western social scientists need to find labels and reasons for why people treat and are treated unkindly? It seems quite simple, what the Buddha taught. Be kind to all living things. I agree. Be kind to everyone. Don't treat someone badly just because they are different, because they think differently, or they look different, or they act differently, or they whatever. Treat everyone with kindness. It's kind of an obvious solution. But I think the problem is that if it was that simple, we would already be living with kindness in society. So people are trying to find other kinds of solutions, I suppose, because tell the world to live kindly, and it doesn't change anything. You still live in unkindness. It doesn't really matter what you say. It just doesn't work. And so scientists are probably trying to find solutions. That's probably why they label things, because once you label it, then you kind of are gaining some kind of control. Then you can look for causes and reasons and all of these kind of things. And so that kind of label gives you a degree of control. That's the point of labels with anything. Naming things kind of pins it down somehow. That's kind of the point of these things. But the problem is that, we do our best. We tell people to live with kindness, and some people will listen to us. Some people will want to develop their minds. Some people will take this seriously, and some will not. Some will go in the wrong direction. Some will do really bad things. Some people go up, some people go down. Some people go from light to darkness, some go from darkness to light, some from light to light. This is straight from the sutras. Some from darkness to darkness. And that's the way the world is. We're just going round and round, up and down, across, backwards, forwards, until we kind of really hit this path big time, and then we're out of here. So all of these questions that have to do with society, there is no solutions in society. That's kind of the bottom line here. All right. Or at least no permanent solutions. There may be some temporary helps and alleviations, of course. Devante, many thanks to you and to Radha and Deepika for this retreat. So there you are. The thanks are already coming in thick and fast, which is wonderful. Bhante, my question is this. Would you please speak to the point of how to observe the impermanence of the 5 skandhas using Anapanasati here? You talked of this already, but I'm confused and might be better able to understand it with additional examples. Thank you very much. Okay, so when you practice Anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing, then as the practice deepens, things start to fade away. Right? So the body starts to fade away. You notice that as you focus on the breath becomes kind of the all-encompassing point of your attention, and the body is kind of fading away. And the body is just one of the senses. It's a felt experience in the body. The other senses start to fade away. The idea of closing your eyes is to reduce the impact from the eyes straight away. It doesn't disappear because sometimes you can see the light through your eyelids, right? The eyelids are quite thin, the light is still there, but eventually the sight, the sense of sight just goes completely here. And so the senses fade away here. And so you go through this process and you can see how far you can take it. Sometimes it will go quite deeply, other times less deeply, depending on whatever cause and conditions are prevailing in your mind at that particular time. And then when you come out of your meditation, that is when you look back, and you look back, what was impermanent? How did things gradually fade away? So you see things fading away. Oh, my body was disappearing. Wow, the body was completely gone. I didn't feel it for half an hour. Oh, that was really nice, actually. The body is dukkha. You can see the body is dukkha, because when the body fades away, you become peaceful. You know the body is dukkha. 5 senses fading away. Wow, how peaceful that is. The sense of sight is actually incredibly disturbing. That's one of the reasons why we close our eyes in meditation, because there's such an enormous amount of information coming through the eyes. It takes up something like 80% of our brain power or something just to process the incoming sights. So of course we close them, and as soon as you close your eyes, you start to feel more peaceful pretty much straight away because of the reduction in input. And so you notice these things, you notice the impermanence, you notice that things are fading away, things are changing. You look at the same thing with your defilements in the mind. You see the defilements going down. You start off maybe a bit restless and a bit kind of all over the place, or maybe you have a bit of tiredness in the mind. And after half an hour, actually you feel quite peaceful and you feel quite clear. The mind has lost that tiredness that it had at the beginning. The defilements have disappeared. They are impermanent. And they are dukkha. It's kind of obvious, And this is the process by which they disappear over time. You see that. So these are all, the defilements are part of the 5 khandhas, right? So that basically you are seeing the 5 khandhas changing. It's a perception part of the khandhas, the defilements. One of the most interesting things that you see disappearing, or you see changing, is the will. The mind becomes peaceful. It is restless at the beginning. You're doing a lot. You're using force or power of the mind or whatever it is. And then as you watch the breath, the mind becomes more peaceful. The will is calming down. You're becoming more an observer. You are being with rather than reacting against. The reactionary mind, the doing mind, this is kind of part of this doing activity. It calms down and calms down. You're doing less and less. And you see that the will is impermanent. The will can be eliminated. There may come a point in your meditation when you are just observing, not really doing anything at all. Not only are you just observing, but the thing that you are observing is incredibly simple, like a nimitta, or maybe just the breath having come to the point where it has become kind of indistinguishable. It's just breath is just this kind of flat noise in the background. It's no longer in and out barely, because it becomes so, becomes like this almost background thing. And so then the will is impermanent. And how nice it is when the will kind of calms down and disappears. And eventually, when you go into a jhana state, the will is completely gone. You cannot access the will anymore. The will is no longer there. And so then you can conclude that the will is non-self, because anything you cannot access by definition is non-self. And so you are starting to see everything in terms of the 3 characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, The three things, yeah? You can see all of these things. You can see perceptions. All of the five khandhas can be analyzed in this way. I talked a bit about the body, which is rupa. I talked a bit about the will. We can see the same with feelings. For example, the painful feelings. Initially, when you start out, there may be some painful feelings in the body. Most people have some displeasure in the body from time to time, and after a while it is all gone, and all that remains are beautiful feelings, piti, peace, sukh, happiness, these things. What happened to the painful feelings? They are gone. They are impermanent, and there comes a point when they are so impermanent that you conclude they are non-self. They've got nothing to do with you. They're just things that come and arise depending on cause and conditions. And painful feelings, guess what? They are dukkha. You can see painful feeling because they are the three characteristics. That's kind of the easy one, right? Everyone gets that one. Painful feeling is dukkha. That's kind of obvious. So that's you don't get any points for understanding that one. But so everything is marked by these three characteristics. In the realm of the five khandhas, and this is what you see in this process. So does that make sense, Rumi? Yeah? No, the will is sankhara. So the sankhara is defined as chaitana. Chaitana is the will or intention, doing of the mind. Vijnana is the knowing aspect of the mind. That's when the will dies down and all you do is know something. You're aware. That's vijnana, knowing awareness. Or choices. It's interesting because the main job of the will is to make choices, to decide between things. You're willing something, you're doing something. So I guess I think it is not. I think it is. Is it always true, however, that the will is choice, or is it sometimes that you sustain the will without actually making a choice? I suppose when whatever will remains, like in the first jhana, for example, where the mind automatically is kind of just going to the object, and it's kind of the whole thing is like an automatic experience. It is not really a choice. It doesn't feel like a choice. It just feels that the mind is doing its own thing. So at that point, you can argue that choice is maybe a little bit too narrow. But I think in general, it kind of adds to the understanding of what is going on. You're making choices. The will is usually, you make choices that are ethically important, for example. It's a moral choice. And in that sense, it's always the will that makes those moral choices. And so in that sense, it is actually quite a good one.
Is the will also connected to life force?
Sometimes the word sankhara means like a force. So life continuum. Because sometimes you have to have the will to live to be able to live, and so that kind of relates to the living. I think that's true. In part, that is true. So you sometimes you lose the will to live, and then you die. You're sometimes you just had enough or whatever. For the for nutriments, is it for nutriments? Is it nutriments for life or for living or for carrying on or whatever? Because willing gives you a reason to live. Willing is so much of your identity. So there's mano sanchetana, there's vijnana, there's passa, and there is there's kabalinkara, the food or gross food or whatever. Yes. All right. Dear Ajahn, I heard another version of the story about the boy who failed first grade. Okay, I read this in the book by Ajahn Brahm, so you probably have the better version then. Okay. The boy was a great meditator, and even though he failed to learn the chants, one day he began chanting. It turned out he was able to recollect his past life when he was a monk, and he knew the chants. Okay. Yeah, so he, Chulapantaka, according to the story here, he was such a good meditator that he recollected his past lives and then learned the chanting by recollecting his past lives. That's interesting, yeah. Yeah. So, okay, it's a nice theory. I don't know if these things ever happen in practice, but it's a nice idea anyway. So, many of these stories that we hear in Buddhism are stories that are kind of part of the Buddhist culture. Yeah, these are not stories often told by the Buddha or stories that necessarily have any historical value. They're kind of these are things that kind of are told down, and so often these stories they will have a root in some kind of reality, but often they will be kind of be developed and move in different directions. So they can be taken as a kind of inspiration, but they should not be taken too literally or too seriously. That's kind of should be reserved really to the word of the Buddha in the suttas. Okay. How to effectively deal with bhava tanha? As even with impermanence, the arising again can be observed, sometimes even fueling. The more and or different, the better. Thank you. P.S. And even dukkha and sukha in all forms pales in the strong affliction to exist. Okay, let me see if I can get my head around this. How to deal with bhavatana is probably the main question here. As even with impermanence, the rising again can be observed, sometimes even fueling. The more, the better. Okay, so all right. So even the impermanence does not necessarily stop you from having bhavatana. It depends how deep the perception of impermanence is. If it is really, really deep, it will not fuel you anymore. It will have the opposite effect. But if it is more shallow, then it may not be able to deal with bhavatana. That is quite right. And so the main point here is don't worry too much about bhavatanha until after you have eliminated the five hindrances and eliminated the five senses. When you kind of attain a deep samadhi state, after that you start dealing with bhavatanha. Everything needs to be dealt with at the right time. You try to deal with things in the wrong time, it is not going to work for you. But the answer is that we are dealing with bhavatanha simply by practicing the path. By practicing the path, because so much of our sense of self expresses itself in how we live our daily life. So you express yourself by breaking the precepts. You express yourself by this sense of self wants to lie. It doesn't want others to know the truth sometimes. The sense of self is greedy. Sometimes it might steal. The sense of self is a big nuisance. So by keeping the precepts, you're actually restraining the sense of self already, and you're already curtailing that bhavatanha to some extent. So by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path as much as you can, having metta, having karuna, if you tell yourself, if you are trying to have metta and compassion and friendliness towards everyone at all times, the sense of self will be very strongly held back in check, because the sense of self does not want to always to be friendly. Sense of self doesn't always want to have compassion. Sense of self wants to express outrage or anger or whatever. So by practicing these things, you are going against so much of the sense of self, and in a sense you are reducing bhavatanha by doing that. So you are curtailing it in a kind of interesting way by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. But the real insights happen after samadhi. So understand again the sequence. Do things in the right sequence. Otherwise you're asking for trouble. Start with the coarse defilements, then the medium defilements, then the refined defilements, then the super refined defilements, and then come the insights after that. Yes, Venerable. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. So yeah, I can't. Yeah. So that I think so. I think Antapindika or Vada Sutta is a very profound sutta actually, where it goes through the various things, various aspects of the five khandhas, not to attach to them. Yeah. So that is actually yes true. So that would be that. But he was at that point probably ready for some really profound things. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I have always liked the Sabbaloke Anabhirata Sandhi. I find it really nice. It is a non-delight in the whole world, whereby you just look at the world and you think, no, oh no, this is unbearable, and you kind of move away from that. And that's really, yes, no, I agree with that one. It's one of the perceptions that is talked about in the suttas, Sabbaloke Anabhirata Sanya, the non-delight in the whole world, moving away. The world is on fire. The world is impermanent, unreliable, uncertain, not to be held on to. Maybe? Yes? Okay. So please feel free to comment as we go along. We're coming towards the very end of the retreat now, having a talk tomorrow morning, and then it's pretty much finished. A few more hours of meditation as you see fit. So, all right. Dear Ajahn, today I left meditating with the sense I believe that I don't deserve jhana right now because I know my ethics is not to the standard. I believe it should. I believe it should be. I see this sense falls under the hindrance of doubt. Yet perhaps this is what happens. What we make ourselves responsible. Your thoughts with gratitude. Yes. So this is kind of what happens if you live an unethical life and you make mistakes. I'm sure you are a pretty good person, but you may have made some mistakes, and maybe then you take some responsibility for that. Everyone makes some mistakes. It's just part of life. So there's two things you should do. You should try to improve your ethical conduct. This is number one. See what you can maximize it. And then the second one is to have compassion for yourself and realize the limits of what you can do, and then forgive yourself for those mistakes. Those are the two steps you can take. Because you're right, we will tend to blame ourselves. We will tend to feel bad about it. Why? Because that's the sense of self. That's what it does. That's kind of the unfortunate consequence of having a sense of self. This is one of the reasons we discussed before. The stream enterer does not get reborn in a lower realm because they know that they are not really responsible. They understand non-self. So they see that actually there is, they shouldn't really blame themselves. And that's kind of the advantage of being a stream enterer. So, yes. It falls under the sense under doubt. It also maybe I can argue, maybe not, because doubt is about what are wholesome and unwholesome qualities. But it certainly falls under the problem of regret. You regret your hindrances, as you see in the dependent liberation sequence. And that regret can manifest in different ways. It manifests in a mind that is a bit. Maybe a bit restless or a bit dark or a bit whatever. It doesn't have the kind of the oomph that you need. Overcoming the hindrances is not all there is to it. There's also developing the opposite, which is the awakening factors. And the awakening factors are what gives the energy to the mind. So you want to have the energy there and then overcome the hindrances on the other side. So both are problematic. Lack of enough energy in the awakening factors and too many hindrances. And bad sila has an effect in both places. Okay, dear Ajahn, I am so fascinated by Sri Lankan Buddhist parents and to observe how they navigate the contradictory desires for nibbana and material happiness. Okay. Indeed, the untiring effort to marry us off often reminds me of the simile from the Potalya Sutta, where the two strong men carry you kicking and flailing towards the burning coals, with the only difference being that in this case they call out, may you attain Nibbana before giving us one final kick into the pit of fire. As we fall in, burning and screaming. No doubt, your previous reassurances that the relationship can be used for spiritual good will only redouble their efforts to scour those disgusting matrimonials of the Daily Mirror. Okay. Even the mere thought of it should be enough to be repelled by the desire for existence. May you be well and happy, Ajahn. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yes, yeah. No, I think that, I don't think parents should be too concerned. If I were a parent, I wouldn't be concerned. It's easy for me to say I'm not a parent, but I think we should give our children, at least in theory, I'm just talking in theory because I don't know, but from a theoretical point of view, I think we should encourage our children to have as free lives as they want, do what what they are inclining towards. Especially if what they're inclining towards is something positive, yeah? If your son and daughter is inclining towards Nibbana, maybe becoming a monk and nun, please encourage that. Yeah, it is a wonderful thing. We have enough doctors and lawyers and things. Okay, they do really good jobs and do very important work, but you can do much more good in the world as a good monk and nun than you can even as a doctor. I'm talking about if you are a really good monk and nun, because you can come to the very underlying causes about what causes real happiness in life. Okay, a doctor can patch you up, they can be very helpful, and, especially a compassionate and kind and caring doctor can do a lot of good in the world. Still, as a monk, you can do much, much more. Look at someone like Ajahn Brahm, or a nun, I should say, because that's obviously the same. Look at someone like Ajahn Brahm, who touches millions of people around the world and gives them a boost, points them in the right direction, gives them a chance to change their life on the fundamental level. That fundamental level is obviously more important than fixing up your body, which is a temporary patching up, but then still you go back and do bad things, and you come back a few years later and say, oh, actually, doctor, my body is falling apart again. And the poor doctors have to fix you up again. Don't be naughty next time, be nice, do the right thing. But, you don't have the same moral authority as a doctor as you might have as a monastic. And yes, so don't, please, if you have children who are aspiring to a monastic life, if they live that monastic life well, it's a wonderful thing. It's a blessing for the world. It's a very, very positive thing. Please encourage them. In fact, I would go so far that if you have a child who does not want to become a monk or nun, encourage them to become a monk or nun nonetheless. That's how far I would go, yeah? You don't want to become a monk or nun? Okay, off to the monastery and check it out, yeah? And see if you like it. Of course, don't force them, but at least give them an opportunity to find out. Maybe they will like Ajahn Brahm's jokes or something, and then they kind of enjoy these things. So this is very important. And I know that people who really understand the Dhamma, they will encourage their children to become monastics because they understand the power of that. But those who are Buddhist in name only, binos, Buddhist in name only, those who are binos, they often get it wrong, and they say, oh no, my son became a monk and nun, I wanted them to become a doctor. And very often that has to do with a selfish concern, unfortunately. My person is reflected in the success of my child, and if my child becomes a doctor, then the neighbors will say, yay, wow, you are a good parent. And maybe the neighbors become envious. Maybe that's even better if they become a bit envious, because then I have really shown that I have been successful. I don't know, people have weird ideas sometimes, and so please don't think like that. Try to think differently, because the world is different from how most people think. If you think like most people, chances are you got it wrong. All right. So thank you for that very funny note. It's really, I recognize the handwriting now. It's really this person has. it's kind of interesting because at a Buddhist society in Western Australia, we have meditation retreats and things, and all the questions are anonymous. But after teaching retreats for so many years, I know exactly who it is who wrote these questions. Yeah, the handwriting is so obvious. It is kind of nice. But anyway, dear Ajahn, how does a person who had low sila in the past, broke many precepts, but after entering the path, makes good effort to keep his precepts, with the occasional hiccups, is he able to grow in the path? How can we develop joy in the sila? By thinking of past deeds as cause and conditions, and that these are no self, or were no self. Okay, so yes, even if you broke your sila in the past and broke many precepts, if you start practicing, it will not be long before you start to change, because that very fact that you have decided to change, that changes everything. Yeah. Now I'm doing the right thing. I understood I was making a mistake. That very change of mind is actually the most important thing here. Yeah, and suddenly you start feeling differently about yourself because of that. But if you're still heading towards those same mistakes as you were in the past, well, the mind never has a chance to clear up. And so, yes, that makes a massive difference. And then, on top of that, then comes the, that practice, doing that over a long period of time. Yeah, doing it again and again and again. That also then gives you a chance that you're proving the point that you're doing this. And then when you sit down, something inside of you knows that you are doing the right thing. Something inside of you knows that, yes, I'm living a good life. I'm not a scallywag. I'm contributing to society, to the world, to my own life, whatever. You know that. And you barely need to reflect on your sila. You just know that this is the case. But you can encourage yourself a little bit like I suggested when we're going through the Sila Nusati. Remind yourself what this does to the world. Yeah, remind yourself how this impacts other beings, that you are keeping these precepts. Sometimes I tell people that when you do an act of kindness or just generosity, say that you come to the monastery in Serpentine, or you come to support Bhante Sujato, or whatever it is, when you support someone who gives a lot of teachings in the world, you're not just supporting that monk or that nun or that monastery. You're supporting something much, much bigger than that. You're supporting something enormous, like someone like Ajahn Brahm reaches enormous number of people. If you give support to Ajahn Brahm so he can carry on his teaching, you have a share in those teachings. You have a share in making the life of millions of people better because of those teachings. That is what you're doing. It is not a small thing. Yeah, it's not really Ajahn. You're supporting Ajahn Brahm, but you're supporting something much larger than that. And this is kind of the power of generosity when it is done in the right way. Or you help building a kuti. Yeah, we're just talking. I was just talking with the Karunika about a monastery that they are establishing in New Zealand for bhikkhunis. And just saying what a wonderful thing it is to establish a monastery in New Zealand. Yeah, one of the greatest things you can do is to establish a monastery, a place where bhikkhunis or bhikkhus can live, because you are, first of all, allowing the Sangha to develop itself by living in a good place. And then the whole of the sasana, the whole of the teaching kind of arises from that, arises from those insights and meditations that those monastics develop through those kutis, etc. So that's why giving a place to dwell is considered very, very high merit in the suttas. Some of the highest things that you can do, because you're giving very clearly, you're giving to the Sangha, you're giving to this large idea of what the Dhamma and Buddhism is about, not just to an individual. It is a broad intention encompassing so much. So yes, this is how you can reflect, right? Remembering what it does. And then as you do that, gradually you change. So make the most of keeping the precepts. Don't just keep the precepts. Do acts of kindness, as many as you can, all the time, in daily life. Sincerely, coming from your heart. Want to be kind. See if you can develop that desire to do good whereby you know that doing good feels so nice that you can't wait to do something good. Yeah, I really want to do something good. That is when it becomes really, really nice. All right. Dear Venerable, who is getting up in the morning? Who is doing the meditation? Who is the doer? Thank you so much. Yeah, yeah. So it's more like what, right? What is getting up in the morning? What is doing the meditation? What is the doer? That is kind of a better way of thinking about it. So it's just doing happening. That's the point. Doing is happening, but no doer is found. There's that beautiful verse in the Visuddhimagga. The path is, but no one. How does it go again? Something about the path is, but no one who walks it, or something to that effect. No traveler is seen. The path is, but no traveler. There's a whole verse though. There's 2 more lines in it, but yeah. So so there isn't really, and this is kind of the weird thing, yeah. The reason why you make a choice, the reason why you do anything, is because the causes and conditions come together in a certain way, and so it happens. You are conditioned to get up in the morning. Yeah, there's kind of your past, your parents told you to get up, they've been doing that in 1,000 lifetimes, and so now you're so utterly programmed to get up in the morning that you have no choice. Even if you try to lie in bed, you probably can't do it. Yeah, you just are so fully conditioned to do this. So you get up in the morning, all kind of cause and conditions come together, and then the doer arises based on those cause and conditions. Not the doer, the doing arises, and then you just do it, and then the sense of self takes credit. Yeah. So, but actually, and so the sense of self often comes afterwards. Sense of self often is a addition to what is going on. But actually, the doing happens whether you have a sense of self or not. The arahant still gets up in the morning, right? And there's no sense of self there. And so the sense of self is like just this additional appendage, which has no real part in this, right? And it's just there in a sense, kind of hanging out, destroying your happiness. That's kind of that's its main purpose, to destroy your happiness. So it is, yeah. So this is kind of how all of these things happen. The reason you sit down on the cushion to meditate is because you've been brainwashed. Yeah, you've been brainwashed by whom? By Bhante Sujato, maybe. By Ajahn Brahm, by the Buddha more than anything else. Yeah, being brainwashed is okay. It's fine to be brainwashed because you're going to get brainwashed regardless. If you don't get brainwashed by the Buddha, you can be brainwashed by something stupid. So choose your brainwashing wisely. That's kind of the trick. Yeah, choose the good brainwashing. This is where wisdom comes in. You are wise about what is good to be used, and then you use that. Because we all know that we are brainwashed. We all know that we are conditioned. We think that we have some kind of seeing the world in a particular way. We think that we are right. We think that we're doing things, but everything is completely conditioned. Our very personality is just another conditioned phenomenon. And this is kind of so hard to see. Yeah, because it doesn't look that way when we look at it. All right, dear Ajahn, I feel very alone and depressed at times, as I have no next of kin. I understand the teachings, but long for human contact at times. Even monks have a community. How to overcome depression, fear, and loneliness? Thank you. Gee, hang out with your Kalyanamittas. Come on retreats such as this one. Yeah, this is already a good start. So come here, go to those various kinds of meetings. You go and stay in the monastery for a while if you have a chance. Yeah, hang out, go to Santi Monastery and go there and cook for the nuns. Yeah, yay! That's a wonderful thing to do, to be able to stay in monasteries. Yeah, and hang out there. And what you should really do, what I recommend you to do, is try to develop the metta practice. Because as I mentioned the other day, if you can develop metta, what will happen is that loneliness disappears, because that need that you have for contact with others, that is now met by the fact that you have metta instead. Metta takes away that need for immediate contact with other people. So develop that metta. Develop it, first of all, in body and speech, how you treat the people around you in the world, whoever that might be. Develop it in thought, how you think about others, yeah? See the positive, forgive the negative because you have compassion, you understand the conditioning of people. Then see the positive, and wow, what a wonderful thing. So many positive qualities, yeah? And then develop things in this way, yeah? But hang out with the Buddhist community. Yeah, go to the things that are happening in the Buddhist community, because it's good to have that support, the Kalyanamitas, to kind of also guide you in the right direction. And as you do that, you will gradually, slowly, hopefully, come out of this difficult situation. So you're already on the right track. Yeah, that fact that you are here is wonderful. Yeah, this is already going the right way. You're heading in the right direction. So you are already on the path to greater happiness. This is what this is all about. So yeah, we've all been through these things before. Yeah, life is like this. Sometimes you feel a bit lonely. Sometimes you feel a bit depressed. That is almost part of life. Very few people never have these feelings. I think everyone has them occasionally. And this is kind of one of those great things to remember in life, is that we have all been through all of these things in our life. Yeah, we have all been male and female. We've all been born in all kinds of cultures and countries. We've all been disabled. We've all been rich and poor, smart, wise and stupid, intelligent and whatever. We have all been through everything basically in this world. And so when you remember that we have all been through those things, then you look at another person, you're seeing yourself. You have been there before. And when you see yourself in another person, you take away the gap between that person and you. That's a beautiful thing to do, because at that moment you create a connection with that person. Instead of feeling alienated from other people because they are different, we need to remove those barriers between us, and then we can really empathize and we can have compassion for others, and we can understand them in the right way. And this matters enormously. And so this, one of the things that is very different in Buddhism from most other areas in the world, very often in the world they talk about that your qualities are kind of inherent to you. Yeah, this is who you are. This is your identity. I am male. I am female. I was born in Sri Lanka. I was born in Norway. I was born in wherever. I am from this kind of family. You're from that kind. As if these things are essential, but these things are not essential. And if we essentialize these things, all we do is create barriers between people. But because we have all been there, and because we will go there again in the future, we have a deep understanding of everyone in the world within us. It's available there because we've been there before. And what we need to do is try to tap into that deeper understanding. And instead of building up artificial barriers, bring those barriers down. And that is kind of a large part of what this is about. So, all of us, we know what that means to be lonely and depressed sometimes. And so we should, and then we can kind of empathize a bit, we can understand, and certainly not dismiss those concerns. Gillian, please. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think the reason why it is because uh, the Four Noble Truths are said in the suttas to be the container within which all other teachings belong. Yeah? So it's that kind of thing which becomes the starting point for teaching, and so they start with that because then everything fits into that. But you have a very important point, and I have always agreed with this, that we need to be wiser in how we present these teachings. We need to present it in a way that they actually are attractive to people, right? Because then they will be interested in this, and then they might practice them, and something might come out of it. Yeah, so no, I am very much, I think that's a really important point. We need to be better at marketing Buddhism. It's such a beautiful teaching. Yeah, it is. To my mind, this is what life is all about. And so we should market it in a way where people are attracted to it. And that's kind of so important. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think, yeah, but one reason is also that people are a bit different, so people need different things as well. That's the other reason probably, and so, yeah, yeah. Thank you. That's good. Yes, yeah. Please.
Add a little bit from personal experience. I lived alone for several years,
Yeah,
and at work, let's just say that they're co-workers, not friends.
yeah.
So loneliness could happen, but I was fortunate. Uh, I listened to Ajahn Brahm all day, all night. Like first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
I may miss some talks because I would go to the bathroom, take a shower and whatnot. But I would hear Ajahn Brahm first thing in the morning, go to work, Bangkok traffic an hour to work.
Yeah.
So one talk by Ajahn Brahm, come back home, Ajahn Brahm, stay home until go to bed, Ajahn
Yeah.
Brahm.
Yeah.
And the most important thing, so I don't feel lonely because Ajahn Brahm, people know Ajahn Brahm says stupid jokes, and that really give you entertainment. So you have Dhamma and then you have entertainment all day. So why do you need to have, need to talk with stupid people about soap opera last night? Because that's what people do at office. But another thing is, listen or watch live stream really helped me a lot. And, I met someone on live chat on YouTube, and now we are good friends. She lives in another country, I live in another country, but we are really good friends. So Ajahn Brahm's live stream and BSV, Buddhist Society of Victoria, you also that have live chat, and then you could become friends. And there is one guy, Ajahn Bamali knows him, Stuart, he lives in England. He is the one who created the website Wisdom and Wonders. He has done lots of wonderful things, and we've been friends for 12 years. I never met him. He lives in England, but we are good friends. And I have quite a few friends from different continents, and we don't feel lonely. And that is one thing that perhaps people who live alone might want to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Excellent. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for that. Yeah. Venerable Karunika. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Good. Yeah. Please. Yeah. Yeah.
First time I'm out in Australia, first year I cried daily.
Yeah.
Slowly, I learned how to listen to Dharma talk a lot. Read some books that move to the heart. my favorite thing to get out of loneliness is clean toilet. Clean toilet. Clean your somehow it helps the mind. Yeah, it helps clean up the gutter of the mind. And when we lonely, our mind tends to go back to the past or maybe the future, but it's not in the present.
Okay.
So when I clean, I gain a lot of energy.
Is that because you are doing something good for others as well? So you're making a connection by cleaning things up? Or is it...
In my job,
yeah.
I do a lot of cleaning for old people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, okay.
that was a part of my job, and I'm having fun here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's helping charge the mind. But in the morning, I meditate 1 hour. Before I start anything, 1 hour meditation. I wasn't doing that because of the will, because of the brainwash.
Yeah.
I'm doing that because I feel like my 5 senses really give me a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
I need to get them in order. So I have to meditate.
Okay.
So meditate helps make your mind become a friend. Because your friend can die. Your friend needs to talk on the phone. But if your friend not there, you can talk to them. Since then, I realized making your mind become a friend.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, that's great. Yeah.
Because that's why we have to read through first and scriptures. Because the Buddha, after he enlightened, he has done 3 learnings about the dependent of the and the 4th one is about loving kindness. You know, after Buddha in this,
Yeah.
he said, Ajahn Vipassana.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is clear stated there.
Yeah.
So it is very having kindness, not to harm me.
Okay. So this is after the awakening. Is that what you're saying?
The first 5 weeks,
First 5 weeks.
before even Dhammachakkar.
Yeah. Okay. It's just. It's taking too much time. Just forget about it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Great. Okay. Good. So there you are. That's a lot of feedback for whoever you are. That's great. That's marvelous. Okay. Good. Let's go on to the next one. Dear Ajahn, you mentioned in the morning that we are not fully responsible for our kammas even. Could you please explain? Many thanks. Well, this is the same thing, yeah? It's the non-self idea. It's the idea that non-self, anatman, I think you call it often in Sinhala, or anatta in Pali, means that there is nothing, you are not, the choices are made because of cause and conditions. There is no inherent you that makes choices. Choices come because of conditioning this way and that way. And so whenever you make a choice, then, you're following a program. So if you're following a program, to what extent are you responsible? And so what we need to do, and we have to be very careful here, what we need to do to get out of that problem is to make sure we get good conditioning. So our wisdom, whatever wisdom we have, we use that, and that wisdom says, okay, I have to, because I am the subject to cause and conditions, let me make sure I get some really good conditioning. What is that? The suttas, good Dhamma talks, being mindful, being kind, doing the right thing. Yeah, all of these things condition you in a good way. Because you are conditioned, that is already helpful. That is a kind of wisdom. And so conditioning changes. You enable that change of conditioning to happen. And then there's the second aspect I was talking about the other day, that you are mindful, you are aware of the danger of just following the same habits from the past. And so you have more mindfulness because you see the danger in that. And so you are aware, okay, wait a minute, let the Dhamma come out rather than just my habits coming out all the time. And then you retrain your mind, you retrain your intention and attention to move in a different direction. Yeah, this is kind of the idea behind this. But are we ultimately responsible? No. Do we take responsibility? Yes. And that's the crazy thing, yeah? We are not responsible, but we take responsibility. And that is part of the problem. And so we need to learn to see ourselves more as being conditioned, and then you have more compassion for yourself because you start to understand that you are trapped by that conditioning here. Yeah, your personality has been formed in the past. Your personality is a trap. It is not something to be proud of at all. It is just what it is. Yeah, it's just kind of, okay, this is who you are. Don't be proud of it. Don't be upset about it or ashamed about it either. Just, it's what it is. But remember, it's a trap. Yeah, because this forces you, compels you to do things in a certain way that may very often be against the Dhamma, against the way the Buddha suggested we should do things. You start to have more compassion for yourself. Jeepers, I'm so conditioned. It's a miracle I don't do more bad things. Yeah, yay, I don't do more bad things. Hooray, wow, I haven't killed anyone. Hooray. That is to be expected in life. Yeah, so this is kind of the way you encourage yourself. You're not really so upset the fact that you are, you make mistakes sometimes. So this is what it means, roughly. Lina. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why they go scot-free.
Hmm.
So for a layperson, even if he or she is not at that level, but does realize that there is no self
Hmm.
very highly, let's say on an intellectual basis, and then doesn't really take the responsibility. So we're not able to waive the responsibility 100% because that sense of self is there inside the thought. But maybe has kind of, is not as hard on himself or herself and says that, well, I'm not fully responsible. I do understand, there is some conditioning going on there as well.
Yeah.
So does that actually lessen the intensity of the karma vimaka then?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're able to forgive yourself. Yeah. You are able to forgive. And that forgiveness is a counteract to the actions that you have done. Yeah. It has to be an honest forgiveness, not a superficial one, but a true, real forgiveness, because you understand that you are trapped in a large part. So absolutely it helps. Yeah. So that is one of the reasons why, having a deep understanding of the Dhamma, of even things like non-self that are such difficult concepts, actually is very, very helpful there. Yeah. So yes, thank you.
By repeating the same thing, you think again about the bad deed you've done.
Yeah.
It generates more bad thinking about it and repenting.
It depends how you think about it. I guess if you think about it as bad, then you are reinforcing it. But if you think about it and you reflect on it in the right way, obviously, then it's going to be helpful. If you think, oh, I did this bad thing, but actually, how bad was it? Why did I actually do it? I did it because of this conditioning from the past. How much choice did I really have? Didn't have much choice. I was just compelled to act in that way. Okay, I forgive myself. That's the right way of thinking about it. Yeah. But yes, if you keep on thinking of it as, oh, I did bad, reinforcing it, then I think it's obviously not a positive thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say somebody is walking and
Yeah.
not intentionally, you do not need to step on insects or any other organism. So your intention of good.
Yeah.
So you are making karmas only to intentional bad. You actually want to kill the insects. But Ajahn here Ramon says that even though your intentions are pure, in theory you could have been more mindful. So you're going to walk carefully and you're going to make sure that you are kind of, protecting the insects.
Yeah.
It's not always possible. So again, you do make a little bit of karma. He's not saying that it's really kind of, doing something.
Yeah.
As you said, this thing of salt in, gauges,
Yeah.
So it's very, very minute that you do little karma which I don't know.
Who says this?
Ajahn Tiradharma?
Tiradamo?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So then he says you're still getting karma, so you just dismiss it, just as a just in a sentence he will say. So I'm just kind of wondering that you forgive yourself, but let's say for Shotapana, so you've totally forgiven yourself, but at the end of the day, you have done, suppose Shotapana has killed someone, so you forgive yourself when that was done, but he actually did commit, there was a body sankara, there was a kaya sankara, so he or she doesn't get any replacement for that.
So the first thing you're talking about was about the you make bad karma if you kill someone or kill an insect because you could have been more mindful. That makes absolutely no sense because intention depends on the motivation behind it. And so it depends on if your motivation is bad, it's bad. If motivation is good, it's good. If there is no motivation because you're blind, it's nothing to do with karma at all. That is not right. What is right there is that if you are mindful and careful not to step on it, then you make good karma because you are being compassionate and caring. But if you just lose your mindfulness, there's no karma whatsoever. So I disagree with that point. That's more like a Jain view. Yeah, you should never really step on anything at all. But sorry, I didn't. What was the extension of that, Lina? Sorry, I lost something there.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
So there is no appraisal of that. So Ajahn, he just kind of laughed it off. He keeps on laughing in every sentence the way he does. So it's very hard to understand
Yeah.
what he wants to convey. It was just maybe
Right.
my understanding.
Yeah.
What I'm just saying is that if Shotapana has, let's say, killed someone, or he has done some previous injury to someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some previous injury, and realizes that this was a mistake and non-self, and so it's non-self, no responsibility, but you have done a previous injury at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So although you're not blaming yourself and you metta and everything, you're forgiving yourself as the victim, whatever,
Yeah.
you still do not accrue any bad karma.
Does the Sotapanna include? Possibly they do. I mean, because the Sotapanna still has some sense of self, and so they may accrue a little bit of bad karma, but it's limited. It's limited. Yeah. So it may block you maybe from getting reborn. Maybe it will block you from entering a jhana or something like that. So you may not get reborn in Brahma Loka, but it certainly won't send you to any bad destination. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we're not getting to a situation where we can career karma. Other things.
Yeah. They won't kill the mom and dad and arahant and these kind of things. Yeah. Sure. Yes.
And if I'm mistaken, sometimes, so there's no intention, so obviously there's no karma.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if there's no intention whatsoever, we understand that chetna, intention is the only thing which is counted as karma. So I guess the question is, if there's no intention whatsoever, but still you happen to do something very previous, which I do understand from my understanding is not a karma, is not counted as a bad karma. But I just wanted to ask Ajahn to looking for that.
To reconfirm that, yes, yeah, of course, yeah. So if you kill someone by accident, then it's not, it's not bad karma. If you, there was an example in the Vinaya about a monk who sits down on a chair, and on the chair there's a blanket. Under the blanket there's a baby. So he sits down on this baby without knowing it is there. The baby dies, and there's no bad karma in that kind of situation, right? It's just an accident. So this is how it goes. There's an interesting story. This is a story of how in the Vinaya Pitaka there is something called the sweat-inducing questions. There's a nice word for sweat-inducing. It's sudorific. So I've translated it as a sudorific verses. And I like that word. I was really happy with that word when I discovered that word. No one else understands it except for me. My sense of self was very gratified when I saw that word. The sudorific verses. And one of the verses is a kind of a conundrum in the Vinaya Pitaka. So if you are really upset with the Vinaya master, because in this monastery sometimes they had a Vinaya master and a Dhamma master, and the Vinaya master is the one who asks questions about your conduct. They have a broken rule or not. The Vinaya are the monastic rules, and the Dhamma master is the one who knows all the suttas, and you ask about sutta questions. So if you are so upset with the Vinaya master because he kind of gives you all of this information about all the rules and everything, you get really, really angry with Vinaya master. And then one day you decide, I'm going to kill the Vinaya master. And then so you sit down and you get your gun ready, yeah, and you kind of hide behind a building, you point the gun, and then the Vinaya master and Dhamma master come walking down, and then you shoot. You missed the Vinaya master, but you killed the Dhamma master instead. Is that a parajika offense? Yeah, that's the question. Is that a parajika offense? Have you actually committed a parajika? And the answer is no, you have not, because you have not killed the person you intended to kill. So this is this is how the Vinaya works. Yeah, the Vinaya is kind of this very legalistic kind of literature where you kind of, sometimes you wonder, you obviously have made a bad karma, but you haven't committed the parajika offense in that kind of situation. Anyway, not sure why I'm telling you that story, but I told you anyway, so there you are. Yeah.
Intention is karma.
Yeah. Chetana bhikkhave kammang vadami. Which way? Chetana bhikkhave kammang vadami. Kammang bhikkhave. Yeah, one of those ways. So, yeah. Okay. Let's carry on. Dear Ajahn, could you please clarify the following terms and their connection? Free will, choice, intention, responsibility, karma, non-self. Has not been fully understood so far by me. Thank you. Wow, that is an interesting list. We have just been talking a lot about it now, so I probably won't say anything more. I hope that has helped, all the things we have been saying. But these ideas are it takes a while before them to sink in. So I would recommend you to keep on contemplating it and then ask questions every now and again, and slowly, hopefully, they will become clear to you what is going on. Yeah. But essentially, the idea is that we are conditioned. The choices are made because of cause and conditions, and not because I choose to be evil, anything like that. Evil happens because of cause and conditions. Dear Ajahn, is walking meditation necessary in developing one's meditation practice? If so, how does walking meditation help? Thank you for your inspirational teachings. How does walking meditation, is it necessary? It is very helpful because you can only sit so much. It depends on how much meditation you are doing. On a retreat like this, I would really recommend to do some walking meditation. You can't just sit on your bottom all day. Well, you can, but usually it's good to get up a little bit and do some moving around. And so it's useful. And after a while, the mind gets kind of had enough of watching the breath. You watch the breath, you kind of come out of that meditation, and you need to do something different. And sometimes when you do different things, they support each other. So different meditations support other meditations, and you kind of build up this whole thing when all of these things come together. And so when you do walking meditation, you can do other things that support the breath and samatha meditation, like contemplations, for example, death contemplation. You can do metta while you're doing walking meditation. Yeah, you can contemplate impermanence. You can do all of these kind of things that we have been talking about. Contemplate some of the similes about the five sense world. Yeah, and as you do that, then you actually are clearing the mind to enable it to go deeper in meditation later on. So they build up together very beautifully. You can also do walking meditation, just walk back and forth and just enjoy. Yeah, wow, this is a nice retreat center. Thanks everyone for being so wonderful and for helping out. Thanks for the great food. Thank you to the Buddha for being, for helping us all. You walk back and forth and just enjoy walking back and forth and have a sense of gratitude. Count your blessings, as they say. Wow, this is not so bad. Yes, there is dukkha, but I can deal with it. In fact, I can feel joy in the middle of dukkha. What a wonderful thing that is. And then you you can use walking meditation in all of these different ways. You don't have to do anything specific. Just walking back and forth and, getting to know yourself can be enough sometimes. Yeah.
There is a sutta that the Buddha talks about the benefit of walking meditation, and in fact, walking meditation makes anapanasati more solid. But I can't remember.
it makes samadhi. The samadhi lasts longer. Is one of the things it says in there. Yeah, because you are, I think, more, because you're moving. Yeah. The samadhi has more stability to it. You don't. If you otherwise you come out of your sitting posture and you kind of lose your samadhi quickly. Yeah. So that is one of the benefits. Another one is your benefits is that I think you're more healthy. Yeah. And what else is it?
Like I remember about digestion and then
Digestion, maybe. Okay. Yeah.
In the sutta, it's in the book.
It's in the book, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
Okay, chapter 3. Okay, good. Okay, excellent. So that is the benefits of walking meditation. Yeah. And what is interesting also is that the Dr. Jivaka, Jivaka, who was the Buddha's doctor and doctor of the Sangha, also doctor of King Bimbisara, he was a very interesting doctor. There's a story of Jivaka. You know the story of Jivaka, Sudama? Yeah, it's in the, you know where it is? Yeah, in the, it's Jivalakandaka. That's the main story of Jivaka. Yeah. And no, it's in the Jivalakandaka. Yeah. Because he gives robes. Yeah. I know something Sudama doesn't know. Yeah. I'm really happy. Okay. So the story of Jivaka, he was this amazing doctor. He must have been. He does a brain operation. This is probably the first brain operation in world literature. Yeah, he opens up someone's brain according to the story, and he pulls out some insects on the brain and puts it back together again. First brain operation in the world. That's in there. But he says, one of the reason I'm talking about it now, he says he goes to the Buddha and asks the Buddha, please build walking meditation paths and saunas for the monks. And the nuns, presumably the monastics, because this is good for the health. So saunas, and that's why many monasteries have saunas, because it's laid out in the Vinaya Pitaka, recommended by Dr. Jivaka. What does Dr. Rumi say? Does she agree with Dr. Jivaka? Saunas and walking paths make sense, right? You get some movement and things. All right. Yeah.
Just concluding this, we know that whatever is happening at the moment, we don't really have a free will, and the choices are made because of the causes and conditions. And now we can recondition them because we are conditioned by Dhamma, so we can make good choices. So, and when we are actually making good choices, we actually feel kind of empowered when we think that we are making a choice, because we're making good choices. So in fact, of course, we are not. But this is the way it is, and we keep on reconditioning ourselves. And the mindfulness help. This is the message that we've been getting for so many years. So 2 questions on this one, because I just keep on going in my head round and round. One is whenever I have some disagreement with my spouse, so I'm quite mindful. And the sati is also, there's sati sampajanya as well. So there's memory, and I know what is happening. So at the moment I'm bad mouthing, I know that this is going to lead to suffering. His suffering, my suffering will cause disharmony in the home. And this is, I'm walking towards the pulpit. This is going to slow my progress towards the path of Dhamma. Everything keeps there, and then each and every sentence, and I know it. And the sati is very strong. The memory is there that this has happened in the past, not once, not twice, many times. So when you give that example of, crossing the traffic light and you're mindful, then you try to avoid the dangers. So at the moment, I'm extremely mindful, and this has happened many times, but still I cannot control myself for saying few things which have become less, but I'm still saying it maybe because I think the message needs to get through, but maybe the language could have been more polite. So that's the part of being, this is kind of unconditioned. And this is not my free will. Like this is not really free will. Because if it were my will, the message is going on. You can stop. This is wrong. This is bad. You're harming yourself. I'm harming myself for heaven's sake. Burning coal. Stop. You're not talking. So it is really totally unconditioned. So how to improve that further? That was one question.
Okay.
And second was when I read the sutta, I think it's Atthakari Sutta.
Which one?
Atthakari Sutta.
Attakari Sutta. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know that
So
one. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
Buddha
Yeah.
says that
Yeah.
everything, when this is not volition,
Mm.
how can you say this is not done because of your volition? Because everything, your energy, your initiative, whatever you're doing, this is all because of your own volition. So, does he mean by own volition in this sutta as unconditioned will or non-free will? Or does he mean, because he says you do have volition, otherwise how will you walk? How will you have initiative? How will you have energy? Because you do have your own volition. So that own volition which he mentions there is presumably will, which is normal sankara, chetna, whatever you want to call it, but that is unconditional. It's choiceless. Is that right?
Okay, so let's start with number one. Yeah. So why is it that even though you know that this is bad, the sati sampajanya is there, you know you shouldn't be doing this, and you know it has led to suffering in the past, still your mouth comes out of your mouth the wrong way, the things you don't want to come out. And the reason is because you know, but you don't know enough. You don't know deeply enough. That's the reason. The right view is not strong enough yet. If the right view was strong enough, you wouldn't do it regardless. So it's like you come into that road, yeah, and you really, the chances of you actually walking into that road, even if it's actually almost zero, because you really understand how dangerous it is to walk into that road. You haven't seen the full danger yet. That's the reason. And the Attakari Sutta is from the Anguttara Nikaya, and it is about this Brahmin comes to Buddha and says there's no Attakari, no Parakari, there is no self-action or other action. And the Buddha says, I never heard such a view before. What are you talking about? Yeah, no one, this is kind of a strange view. And so Attakari there just means that you are acting, it's coming from you. Yeah, it is coming from these five khandhas. Yeah, so there is action in these five khandhas. Whether those actions ultimately stem from a real self or whatever they stem from, that's kind of irrelevant. The point is they come from these five khandhas. Another person is another set of five khandhas, and there's action stemming from them. And these actions have results, and they affect each other. And so there is action. And so there it means action from oneself, not action from a self. And that is the difference. Action coming from another, not from another self. And that is the difference. So there is individual action with individual results. They don't relate to anything fundamentally true or anything essential. So something like that, yeah. Okay. Respected Venerable, who is able to predict that Maitreya is going to come and where he is now? How often does a Buddha arise? Do we have any authentic literature about the lives of previous Buddhas? Thank you. Let me start with the last one. Do we have any authentic literature about the lives of previous Buddhas? Well, we have, the Buddha sometimes talks about previous Buddhas. The Buddha Gautama, our Buddha, he talks about previous Buddhas occasionally, like Buddha Kassapa. He says that he was Jyotipala, this young Brahmin under previous Buddha Kassapa, in the Gatikara Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 82. Is that right? 82? 82, I think, 81, 82. I always get confused with those numbers. 81, one of those, 82 or 81. Anyway, close enough. And so there are previous Buddhas. It's kind of obvious. Who were they? What were they? It's kind of irrelevant. Yeah, it doesn't really matter who they were. Their teachings will be roughly the same as the Buddha we have now. Why? Because they understand the same thing, non-self. They understand the picture. They understand is the same. Can maybe be expressed in slightly different words, but it will roughly be the same teachings. And in fact, the reason why there have been Buddhas in the past and the reason why there must be Buddhas in the future is because this is a natural phenomenon that arises in the world. A Buddha is like a natural phenomenon, just like we are natural phenomena. Yeah, every now and again, the factors come together in a person in such a way, through their background, through their parents, through their past life. They build up so much wisdom, so much understanding, so much spiritual energy. Yeah, it happens randomly. You don't know where exactly it's going to happen, but it does happen to some people. And suddenly one of these people is able to make the breakthrough because of all of those conditions coming together. There may also be social conditions. It may require a certain society for a Buddha to arise. Yeah, sometimes I think the chances of a Buddha arises in Australia is probably very slim. Yeah, I'm not sure if this kind of society encourages Buddhas to arise. Most of the world is like that. It doesn't really have the structure for a Buddha to arise. I think India, especially ancient India, is one of the few exceptions, because there you had respect for ascetics and Brahmins who actually went forth and tried to solve, the kind of the weirdest things about life, trying to understand what life is all about, etc. You had people doing this. They would leave the household life. They got support. You go into the village, people will support you for these kind of things. And you had other ascetics and Brahmins who already had practiced a long way on that path, who already attained samadhi. And so all you needed was this last little step to actually gain the insight based on that samadhi. So many of the factors that were already in place, that took you a long way. And then on top of that, you get this being with exceptional spiritual faculties, and it's like the fire and the fuel, and the match, and boom, the thing happens, and then you get the Buddha based on that. So Buddhas are natural phenomena. And this is actually what is beautiful about Buddhism. Because most religions, there's like one savior who arises, and if you don't believe in that savior, tough luck. Yeah, and it happens once. Why are we so lucky that this Savior came about just when we were here? It kind of makes us special, right? We are special because we arise at the time when Jesus came into the world. What about all those people who existed before Jesus? What chance do they have? Zero chance. That's kind of a bit weird that there's only one phenomenon happening just once like that in the history of the world. But Buddhism is about recurring phenomena. It is about natural phenomena happening again and again and again. And so if a Buddha can arise once, a Buddha can always arise. And that's why there is an infinite number of Buddhas in the past, or countless, or whatever, however you want to talk about it, and there will be more Buddhas in the future. Yeah, we guaranteed there will be Buddhas in the future, because this is how nature works. Nature produces Buddhas. And so, just a minute, Venerable, yeah. And so this is the first point, right? And then, so we know, but actually the exact nature of these Buddhas, who they are, and the details about them, is kind of irrelevant. Yeah, and looking for that is kind of missing the point. The point is that we have a Buddha now, we have the teachings of that Buddha, and we should be grateful for that Buddha to actually come into the world, to have compassion for every one of us, and give us these teachings. So again, thank you, Buddha, for being there. And if we start to think about other Buddhas, like Buddha Maitreya, we're actually missing the point, because we are, people build statues to Buddha Maitreya, whatever, they pray, some people pray to Buddha Maitreya, but actually we don't know when this Buddha is going to rise. We don't know whether the name of this Buddha is going to be Maitreya. I don't know where that name comes from even. It's like this random name picked out of someone. Maybe someone had a meditation and they saw the future Buddha. Oh yeah, and it was called Maitreya. Okay, write it down quickly before you lose it. And then it made its way into the books, yeah? Something like that is probably what happened. But actually, this is taking the attention away from the fact that we have something amazing and marvelous now. And then instead of focusing on something that is just unknowable about the future. So, do we know anything about Buddha Maitreya? No, we don't even know if there is such a being as Buddha Maitreya. Buddha Maitreya is mentioned once. The name Maitreya is mentioned in the Dhammacakkassyanada Sutta, Digha Nikaya 26. And in there you find the idea that in the future there will be a Maitreya arising in the world. There is a parallel to that sutta in the Chinese canon. The word Maitreya does not occur in that sutta, right? And so this seems quite likely to be in some sort of addition happened later on. It's only mentioned once, so I think very unlikely to be of any real significance in the suttas. And so this is most likely some later development when people kind of got worried and scared. The Buddha has gone, Buddhism is declining, what's going to happen next? Okay, let's turn to the next Buddha. And so please forget about the next Buddha. When the next Buddha comes, the best way to benefit from the next Buddha, if you're still around, is to practice Buddhism as best you possibly can in this life. If you do that to the best ability, including trying to understand the Dhamma, having as much right view as possible, being as pure-hearted as you possibly can, then the chances are you will recognize that Buddha Maitreya if you haven't made an end of suffering already here. So how often the Buddha arises? Whenever someone makes that breakthrough. Yeah, so this can be really random. Sometimes it can be vast time spans, otherwise short time spans. It is said that in the present eon there's 5 Buddhas, and that's kind of really unusual. But in previous eons, there have been long time gaps between previous Buddhas. That's kind of the traditional way of understanding this. Yeah, that's basically it. Venerable.
I may be wrong, but I also understand it as a natural balance of plus and minus energy. If there's enough negative energy, then somehow there has to be a kind of balance coming for the whole thing to continue. So I see it more as a natural phenomenon in the higher states. That these things have to come to keep going to balance the plus and minus energy.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yes. Yes, please.
Some search on the future Buddhas.
Yeah.
Is from this is
Anagatavamsa. Yeah. Anagatavamsa.
It was written
Yeah.
in the year 1000-ish, and as a result of the political turmoil in India.
Yeah.
This is one way to kind of help people to have belief in Buddhism again.
Yeah.
So,
Anagatavamsa is the Pali word. Anagata means future, Vamsa means lineage, the future lineage, that's what it means. And it talks about future Buddhas, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Have you heard about Lady Vietnam and a monk from India? Have you heard about him?
No?
Our country in May, last May,
Yeah.
was celebrating his victory. He practiced Thanga
Yeah.
for the last 6 years.
Uh-huh.
So people found out him. He walked north to south Vietnam 4 times in 6 years. And he's wearing patchy clothes. Asked for 1 meal a day.
Uh-huh.
And now he's on his way to India by foot. He just passed by Laos. I think tonight he entered Thailand.
Okay.
And he walked with 5 more monks, 6 monks, including him. And I see the way he talks. He now 43. And the way he talks, the way he behaves, Vietnamese people call him Buddha. Buddha means way. And the way he talks to me is so pure, so pure. And he knew the Nikaya, he knew all the sutra inside out. He practiced, and I don't know, look at him like a Buddha. It's hard to say.
Yeah,
But the whole country celebrating his victory.
Yeah.
And we worked it out. He was born 19th of May.
Yeah.
But he's famous. Enlightened monk, also Vesak monk, May this year too. So we all thought he maybe died same month, May, like Buddha. It's lovely.
Okay. Yeah. Usually what they say is that you cannot have 2 Buddhas in the same, you cannot have another Buddha arise as long as the dispensation of the previous Buddha is still alive. That's what they usually say. That's kind of the... Yeah, so as soon as it's gone, whatever time that is, 5,000 years or... I think 5... These numbers are just kind of round numbers. They don't mean exact things, but, when it's gone. That's usually what they say. So, yeah. Because you don't need to start Buddhism again because it's already here, right? That's why you can't really be a Buddha when there's another Buddha, because the Buddha kind of starts it again. So you would be an arahant. Yeah. People say, yeah, we call him Buddha. Okay, so it's like an arahant maybe in that case. Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, that's nice. Yeah, that's good enough.
No, he wasn't banned. He was on the street, and 1,000
people on the street with him, so many trying to death. So the government negotiated with him to stop the war. So then he sent, asked him for his wish to send him to the well. He rode in the mountain for 4 months for the government to work things out. And in the end, they built a place for him to move there for temporary for the government to work things out. Because whenever he comes, the traffic is jammed. Just and now, right now, last few days on the internet, I saw Lao people also from getting Lao as well. So I don't know.
Wherever he goes, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah,
When he talked about
yeah, yeah,
Ajahn Chah to me,
yeah.
when he talked so pure, he said, David, I'm not anybody, I'm just a practitioner. But the way he talked about it,
Okay, yeah, all right.
he said he wanted to become the knower of the world.
The knower of the world, yeah, yeah.
He practiced it.
Okay, okay, good, yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go on to the next question here. Dear Ajahn, one wonders as to why all beings were born, created in the first place. Then they all have to go through all these life cycles and then maybe extinguish later. Does it ever come to an end? What is the purpose of all this? Yeah. That is the point. What is the purpose of all this? This is, so the purpose of all this is to make an end of it, because that's when you find happiness. That's kind of the purpose of it. Why were all the beings were born? They were born because they had craving in the past. They created themselves through their own craving and through their own ignorance. And the Buddha says, no first point of craving and ignorance can be found. This is what the Buddha says, no first point can be found. Yeah, and so what that means is that, it just goes back and back and back and back and back, and you cannot discover any beginning to this. So there is no creation in Buddhism. There is no ultimate creation, I should say. There is no first birth or anything like that. So that is why the Buddha takes a very pragmatic approach to all of this. He doesn't really get into these kind of philosophical ideas. Yeah, he doesn't find any ultimate cause, because that's not what Buddhism is about. Buddhism is not about philosophizing about the world or finding out about these things. Buddhism is a very pragmatic and very practical thing. There is a problem, we are suffering, and so you solve that problem. You solve what you can solve, and you don't contemplate and philosophize about things that probably have no solution. And that's kind of the point here. So so Buddha was very pragmatic. Dear Ajahn, when one enters Sotapanna, is Sakkayaditthi completely eliminated? My understanding is that one has to become an arahant to completely eliminate Sakkayaditthi. So the answer is that there's two different things. There's something called Sakkayaditthi, and then there is mana. And Sakkayaditthi is a view, and is a view that there is an existing personality, an existing aspect of you that is permanent, that is always there. That's the idea of Sakkayaditthi. And views, all wrong views, are eliminated when you become a Sotapanna. So Sakkayaditthi is completely eliminated. However, there is something called mana, and mana goes with you all the way to arahantship. And mana is the conceit or the pride, the feeling that I am, the sense that I am. So the point here is that the mind has many different layers to it, or degrees of insight. And so if you ask a stream mentor, is there a self? They will say no, because the view is correct. But even though the view is correct, they will still feel sometimes within as if there is a self. They will think in terms of a self, I am. Knowing when the kind of view gets sorted out, they will know it is wrong thinking, but the habit is so strong that they will continue to think like that. And so what happens between stream entry and arahantship is that gradual purification of the mind until all of that wrong thinking is given up. And there's a sutta about this. There's a sutta about everything. There's a sutta called the Khemaka Sutta in the Kanda Samyutta, the 22nd chapter of the Connected Discourses, number 89 or something like that. somewhere in the 80s. And according to the Khemaka Sutta, this very question arises. Someone says, "Oh, well, you don't have the view of a self. That means you're an arahant." And Khemaka says, "No, I'm not an arahant. Even though I don't have that view, I'm still just a stream enter. So how is that possible? So what is going on there?" And then they have this idea. It's like when you have a chest of clothes. Those clothes have been washed, right? That's like becoming a streamer. They have been washed, but they still have the scent of cow dung in them. Because in those days, they used cow dung for washing the clothes. That's kind of nice, isn't it? Cow dung has some kind of antiseptic quality. It's kind of, I don't know, I like that idea that I was just in India and I saw these cow patties on the walls of houses everywhere, being dried everywhere. I was really enjoying going to India. It's just a completely different reality to be in India. It's really enjoyable. And anyway, so it's just like that. So you have been washed. You are a stream enter. Your view has changed, but there's still the smell of cow dung is still there. And so you take those clothes, you put them in a scented chest, and after staying with a nice scent for a while, the smell of cow dung vanishes. The sense of I am, the thoughts I am this or that vanishes after a while, just automatically through the process of the stream enter, thinking right and practicing in the right way. So that is what you find there. Question number 2, can one become a stream enter by reaching samadhi, or is it necessary to enter a jhana? Samadhi and jhana are not really all that different. They are very closely related to each other. Generally samadhi means jhana. That's the general meaning of samadhi. Samma samadhi, right samadhi, is always jhana. And of course, it is samma samadhi that is important. Is it absolutely required to reach samadhi or reach jhana to become a stream enter? It's one of those questions you cannot really say if it is absolutely necessary or not, but it is certainly something that is recommended. It will help you. Don't stop beforehand. Just keep on practicing until you've practiced the whole Noble Eightfold Path. All right, we have come to the last questions tonight. Dear Ajahn, inspiring teaching. Okay, that's a good start. I understand that generosity is a great thing to practice in daily life. My question is how to balance the act of generosity and expectations, perceptions. For example, I have been donating to a charity over many years, but not sure to continue, given that they keep sending labeled pens and things as a way of appreciation of my donation, spending money for unnecessary things. Am I wrong to stop donating to this charity? I think no charity is going to be perfect, and you should never look for perfection when you do these kind of things. Not every cent that you give is going to be spent wisely. Most charities have overheads. They have things that need to be paid and all of these kind of things. So don't, sending your pen is probably not going to be, hopefully you give more than the cost of a pen, right, when you give to that charity. So it's not as if your donation is going to waste or anything like that. Just don't set your expectations too high, because you are demanding things maybe that are impossible to meet. It's like when you give it to a beggar on the street, can you be sure that that money is going to be well spent? No, you cannot. It's impossible to know. But don't wait for the perfect opportunity to give, because if you wait for that, you're going to be waiting forever. Just give it when you feel like it. When the mind opens up, the sense of compassion and generosity is there, then give regardless. Don't try to be too calculating or figuring out exactly what is the best way, because you just end up stopping a beautiful act from happening spontaneously. That is what I would recommend, because and then after a while you think, okay, not everything the more you give, most generosity is going to go in a good place. It's going to be very useful. Not everything, and that's fine. That's good enough. and then you learn how to be generous. You learn how to give, and that is very positive. Yes, please.
There are websites that go to the great charities.
Okay.
Actually explain which charities are in terms of what goes to.
Okay. Great. Okay. Yeah, that's very useful information. Thanks. Thanks so much, Stu, for that information. So yeah, so check it out online, the charity ratings and how they spend their money, etc. That's great. Yeah. Please. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes charities do
Yeah.
these things just to show their appreciation.
Mm.
So don't think too harshly. They,
Yeah. Yeah.
spend
Yeah.
money wisely.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
Maybe someone's living things for free. That's why
Yeah.
I thought that maybe there's a manufacturer who want to do it, so they have to get the respect.
Yeah. Could be many things exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's anyway, it's really, especially if it is a Dhamma you're sending out, that's really nice, It's a really beautiful exchange, generosity, Dhamma coming back. Better than pens, I reckon. Yeah. Unless the pen has a really nice Dhamma message on it. Yeah. Then it might be nice.
And then for about 2 years,
Yeah.
send their data both.
Yeah.
And then after we established
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Great. So, okay. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got. I just want to apologise first. I've got something that I'm clinging to that's it's not like it's kind of it's been brought up, but it's not
Resolved.
Dharma.
No. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So I want to comment.
Yeah.
When you because I just want to clarify, because we can all have different interpretations of what people mean. When you said, because this is quite personal to me, so when somebody asked about autism earlier, and then you said this phrase, "We are all on the spectrum."
Yeah.
That didn't mean you don't have this disability. Like, this disability doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Don't
No.
complain
No.
about,
Yeah.
don't complain
No.
about the difficulty
No.
of
Yeah.
the
Right.
world.
Yeah.
You meant
Yeah.
we all have
Degrees of it.
broader, we
Yeah.
all have
Yeah.
some form.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
I just
Yeah.
want to bring it up because
Yeah.
in the autism communities that I've been in, many people express a lot of suffering around when they disclose they're autistic. Someone will say, "Oh, we're all on the spectrum."
Okay. Right.
And
Yeah.
it's quite painful for them.
Okay. Yeah. No, I tend to think it's like we have all also been autistic in the past, and I think that for me that is more like an opening up of the possibility of actually being compassionate to that person, because you can see yourself in that person. For me that is kind of very useful. It's very easy to walk down the street and see a beggar on the street and dismiss them. Yeah, what have you done with your life? You haven't worked hard enough, or you whatever. But instead to recognize that you also have been a beggar on the street in the past. And that moment you create a connection with that person rather than rejecting them. There's a very big difference there. So yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. That's good. Yeah. So great. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Anyone? Yes, Venerable? Yeah.
Because I used to be very critical at some point, and somebody, a famous teacher, said to me, "You are the same." I said, "I'm not. I would never do that." He said, "If you would not have done it, you would not be able to relate to it. So we may have done so many things in the past, because otherwise we will not
Right. Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, you know it because you have been there yourself. Yeah.
You will
Yeah.
recognize it if you have some kind of connection there.
Mm.
Not something that's on the sky.
Yeah.
Somehow
Absolutely.
resonates with you, so
Yeah.
there's a reason for it.
Yeah. And also, I think sometimes the things that we reject in ourselves, we criticize other for. We don't want to see it in ourselves, and we are kind of slightly suppressing it, don't want to know about it, and then we criticize others for the same thing. It's kind of one of the psychological mechanisms that's funny for human beings.
We're highly developed for
Yeah.
past moments. We are still alive to do all these things.
Yeah.
So that is also not to be amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, please, Joel. Integrity. What do you mentioned integrity before, I think, and she wanted to know more about the details of integrity, what that means.
When integrity always would have the basic precept as a foundation. I mean, it's basically a question for the Acharya, not for me. So basically, I would say you have to have the feeling what is right and wrong. You have to base it on the precepts, yes. And then, of course, integrity can have many levels. And also, again, something to do with culture as well. And also with your ability. We can only walk in our time sometimes. We wish we could do more, but we can't. So honesty is very important. Integrity and honesty to me go together. They dance around each other. And please, Acharya, please add more to it. So that's a moment more.
Oh, it's good. It's great. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Anything else before we take a break, before we meet again? Everyone okay? Yeah. So let's carry on. Yeah. Please, Joel. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't love me. I'm not sure.
Okay. Is that?
She said, I can't really remember if it's real or not.
Yeah.
And I just said, it's attention.
Attention. Right. Yeah. 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 You mean how does it relate to karma? Is that what you mean? Oh. Yeah. Yeah. How to manage it? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, about the that love is attention. That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, you show your respect for somebody by attending properly to what they say, and you kind of listen to them, and you take it on board, and then you respond in an appropriate way. It's a nice way of showing respect for somebody. I suppose a kind of love or friendliness, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that is there's a lot to that. Another way of expressing love is to accept someone else. To accept them for who they are, not to judge them too harshly. To accept yourself for who you are is a kind of self-love, if you like, or self-compassion. And that's a beautiful way. Just okay, you are who you are. That's fine. You can be who you are. Don't have to be anyone else. And this is kind of Ajahn Brahm is like that. He accepts you for who you are. You don't have to prove yourself anything. So that is. So that's kind of nice. Yes, Venerable?
I also would say that our opinions also change often.
Yeah.
We thought we react to something, and tomorrow we may have a different reaction. So again, that's where everything is so fluid.
Yeah. Right. So yeah. So we shouldn't judge so quickly because we will change ourselves. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How could I have thought like that? You know, in the past we remember something. You know, something is not totally different. And you can justify it.
Mm.
So it's again the impermanence. It permeates everything.
Mm. Yeah. So exactly. So yeah. So when you're young, you're kind of left-leaning politically. When you get older, you kind of can become more conservative. You know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then we judge people. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But coming back to mothers, Joel, because that's an interesting one. So where do we have the mother we have? And very often it's because of some kind of family relation in the past life, and we tend to get reborn, yeah, with those people that we are attached to. Just like in this life, who do you hang out with? As people you kind of feel some sense of connection to. So you are drawn to those people and you kind of hang out with those people because you have a connection with them. When you die, your mind is drawn towards certain people. Bang, you get reborn there because of that. So it has to do with two things. Karma decides where you get reborn, and attachments and connections, like the realm you get reborn, and attachments and connections decide who you hang out with, including the family that you kind of end up with. And so they can all be all sorts of things. Sometimes we are attached for good reasons, sometimes we're attached for bad reasons. And that can then decide whether you kind of get on with your mum or not, right? So that can make it interesting. Yeah. But so that is kind of, that is, I think, where, to a large extent, where it comes from. Yeah, and then you have to kind of negotiate that relationship to the best of your ability, whatever that is. I'm not sure exactly where you're coming from there, but yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. Right. Like the mother loves her only child. Yeah. 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 I think the point of that. Any Venables, would you like to say something? Yeah. No. Okay. Would like to say something? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I will speak then. I will just carry on speaking. Yeah. So I think the point there is simply that a mother tends to always forgive her child. Yeah. A mother who sees, like the child growing up, sees the child when it's young, when the child is small, it's very innocent and very kind of sweet. When they are kind of 5 or 6 years old, children like that are kind of very sweet very often. And you remember that. You remember the good qualities in that child. And regardless, or almost regardless, depending a bit on what kind of mother you have, the mother will forgive that child almost regardless of what it does. This is the power of being a parent. It's kind of really, really, really strong. Yeah? And so the idea there is to get into that mother mind. Yeah, and when you have that mother mind, you can forgive almost anyone in the world. This is kind of the point. So if you see everyone in this room as your child, yeah. I'm looking around. I'm kind of trying to see you as my child. It's kind of an interesting experiment, but it changes things, yeah. Because you remember, you see the good in that person. You see that young, when you were innocent, you see the good qualities, and that is kind of the idea there. I think, yeah, trying to get into that mother mind with everyone in the world, and yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's kind of part of what I was trying to say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what I remember is because I was shot, she had attention. Attention. And I was like, attention. Yeah, no, it was sort of like one word as far as I remember.
Who was that monk? Can you? Not sure. It was me, was it? I used to be the work monk. I cannot recall doing that, but anyway, sometimes, yeah. Broken-hearted monks. Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you, Deepika. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks so much. Yeah, maybe we should get back to doing some more meditation and things. Yeah, and I'm going to go back to my kuti. I was going to have a quick chat with Venerable Sanata Vihari, just to have a quick chat, because we haven't talked at all during this retreat, except for saying what? Not much at all, actually. So, but I'll be back again at 11:30, and we can do some chanting or whatever at that time. That was it.